guys. I hope you're having a good day today. I have mentioned several times in various comments and videos, etc., about sterilizing your pumice or potting mixture. And there's some different ways to do it, but I thought I would show you the way I do it today and why, and yeah, just give you a little bit of an idea of what that looks like. Now, when you're sterilizing potting soil, like regular potting soil with peat and compost and bark, etc., it looks a little bit different than when you're sterilizing just something like pumice or sand or granite or something like that. You don't have to be as careful. When you're sterilizing soil, and pardon the dishwashers going in the background, hopefully that's not too noisy. For soil, when you're sterilizing it, you have to be careful not to overheat it. It can cause off-gassing of various and sundry substances depending on what's in it, especially if it has fertilizer, which like Miracle-Gro type potting soil, a lot of the commercial type potting soils have some type of a fertilizer already in them. And when you heat that up, breathing that can really not be good. The same can be said for pumice if it has any kind of an additive, but you don't want that anyway. So if your pumice has an additive like an antifungal, antibacterial, which they put in sometimes for using in animal stalls or horse pens, etc., if it has something like that in it, you don't want to do this. But if it's just plain Jane rock, like this is, sterilizing it isn't something that's completely necessary all the time, and I definitely do not do it for all of my pumice, not even close. I have never had any trouble with this particular type of pumice that I get locally here having bacteria and fungus that has overtaken any of my plants. I've never had any trouble with it. I've only had trouble with other potting mediums having bacteria in them. But if you have a plant that is really struggling, or you just got a brand new plant that was expensive, or you just kind of want to give it the absolute best chance possible, sterilizing your mixture is a great thing to do. And that is my oven beeping telling me that it's hot enough. And how I do it is in the oven. You can do it in the microwave. I just don't like to. It makes me nervous, and I just don't really like microwaves. So we happen to have one right now, but I don't use it. I like using the oven. It does take longer. Now, what I start with is rinsing it. You can see how dirty this water is. And if I was going to rinse a bunch of this, I would not do it in the sink because this really fine dust can kind of get concrete-like. And if you were going to rinse a whole bunch, which it would take quite a lot, but just be sure and run plenty of water down your drain if you're doing this inside. If not, it's way easier to do it with a hose outside and just do this on your lawn. The minerals from this really fine grit that is coming out, the sand and dirt, are great for your yard or garden. So just rinsing this pumice out over the top of any other plants outside you want is better. But since we have a frosty winter wonderland outside, as you can see, I'm not going to be doing that right now. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to do this in the sink. This helps for several reasons, but when we're sterilizing it, it primarily helps with just making it less messy later when we're cleaning up, just less really fine dust to breathe, etc., which we don't really want. So just rinsing out that dirt, as much water as you can let drain out is going to help it dry out faster if that matters to you, but you don't actually have to dry it out completely when you're sterilizing it. It's more about the temperature that it gets up to. All right, I'm gonna move the camera over here to the stove. So I just take a cookie sheet. You can use anything you want, but just a cookie sheet is what I use, and spread out your pumice however much you want to do at a time. I'm actually going to add a little bit more to this. For potting soil, there's certain temperatures that you need to keep it at so that it doesn't gas off, etc. For pumice, I usually have my temperature set between 250 and 300, and I do it for 20 minutes in the oven. And that just gets it really good and hot, kills anything that we don't want, and then we can pull it out. After you sterilize is a fantastic time to super soak if you want to do that, which is another thing I've mentioned, and I don't think I've actually made a video on it. yet, but I will get to that shortly. So for now, I'm going to rinse another strainer full of this and add it to this cookie sheet because I have a little bit more room, and poke them in the oven to start cooking, and I will be back shortly. Alrighty, I am actually going to do another cookie sheet full while I'm at it, because I don't like to run the oven for just half full, and since I have 2 racks and can fit 2 cookie sheets, I am going to go ahead and rinse off some more. And so I just thought I wanted to talk to you just for a minute about water and a couple of things involving that. I've been trying to make some more basic videos and not go off on as many rants and just nerdy things and try and keep them a little bit more basic and simple, and just show, you know, repotting this particular plant or something like that, and not just go off on quite as many things where it gets so overwhelming. And I will definitely make more very nerdy videos in the future, don't get me wrong, I can't resist, but I'm trying to not overload my videos with too much. But that being said, I want to mention this right quick. The first thing is, I mentioned doing this outside would be a lot better. A, to keep your sink from getting clogged, and B, because the minerals are fantastic for your lawn or garden or whatever, flower bed, you name it. But the third reason is for water usage. And for us here, we are out in the country on a lovely little farm. We have 40 acres, and we have a great well and septic system, and our gray water runs off, gray water being the, you know, sink and not toilet water, runs off into our field where our orchard is and where our fruit trees all are, and helps water them, and they love it, and they grow really, really well. So I don't feel too bad about wasting, so to speak, water in my sink here. And you've probably noticed that based on how I've watered and just used a lot of water from time to time. And I just wanted to mention that our water isn't getting wasted here, it's going out to our fruit trees, so that's one of the reasons that I don't feel too bad about doing this, aside from the fact that it's winter. But if you are in the city and your water is just going down the drain and you're racking up a water bill and it's not helping any of your plants outdoors, then I would definitely recommend doing this outdoors if possible. You can also do it over a tub, just to where you save all of this water if you can't do it outside, and then use it to water your plants with, use it to water even your lawn or something outside with. If you have that option, have a tub that could be used, that works really great. And the last thing I wanted to mention about water in particular is that I am using, obviously, good well water. We have tested our well water. We know what's in it. We know what's not in it. My plants, for the most part, like it. It does tend to be a little bit hard, and it seems to have gotten kind of harder over the years. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. If we just have kind of a new piece of an aquifer open up or what. There's a really big aquifer that a lot of people are tapped into up here, their wells. But the hardness is fine for something like this, but pumice is extremely porous. If you've watched some of my videos going into more details about it, you know this. And I've talked about super soaking multiple times, and what that is taking really dry pumice and soaking it in a fertilized solution of some variety. You can do all kinds of different things with that, which I will go into when I do a video on that. But it absorbs and holds nutrients really well. But unfortunately, it also absorbs and holds chemicals quite well. And they actually use pumice as a chemical, I lost my word, a means of transportation. They soak the pumice in, they have it fairly small. They have fairly small particles. They soak it in a fertilizer or chemical solution and then spread that over a large area. And then the pumice distributes it slowly, kind of as a time release, nature's time release capsule, kind of. And this works to our advantage in some ways, but can work to our disadvantage, and that's why I wanted to mention this. If you are using city water that's full of fluoride and chlorine, etc., to rinse this out with, the pumice is absorbing a lot of that. Pumice is actually used as a water filtration substance, and it is actually very effective at removing a lot of really harmful chemicals when used as a filter. Just water, you know, drained through it slowly. It can take out a lot of things. Primarily fluoride is one of the things that it can latch onto. So if your city water is full of chemicals and you're rinsing and just kind of bathing this in chemical water, you may be inadvertently concentrating some of those chemicals that we don't want right around the roots of some of your most sensitive or precious plants. So if at all possible, use some distilled water. I know it's not cheap, but they're only a couple dollars a gallon or $1 a gallon here, and it doesn't take that much. And if you're saving the water and reusing it to water your plants with, then you don't have to feel so bad about being wasteful. But if you can have rainwater is the absolute best. I have gallons of it, but I use so much I don't want to use it to rinse my pumice, and our well water is just fine, so I'm not using my rainwater for this. But it is something to definitely keep in mind about what water you're using. Now, when we're sterilizing it after we are rinsing, some of those things are evaporating off. Chlorine and a couple others evaporate off fairly easily, and especially with some extra heat, they can evaporate out of the rocks. Now, there's some new chemicals they're using and some new types of chlorine type. I forget what it's called. I'm blanking out, but there's a new type of chlorine that doesn't evaporate off that they're now using in a lot of city water systems to kill bacteria and make the water potable. So anyways, I don't have any actual, hard evidence of it's going to retain these particular chemicals and that will be detrimental to your plants. I do not know. All I know is that it's like a sponge, and that it's used for water filtration, and that it works very, very well, and that it works really well when used to disseminate other products like fertilizers or insecticides, etc. Let me see. I'm spreading this other cookie sheet out real quick. I didn't want to move the whole camera. But keep in mind water sources. We don't think a lot of times about rinsing stuff, as being likely to damage something. So you might say, oh, I don't water my plants with my faucet water, but it would be fine to rinse my pumice with. And that's why I wanted to mention it, because it may, but it may not. It depends on how much evaporates off later, and depends on how much you're wanting to baby your plant that may or may not be kind of struggling. All right, you can see it in there cooking away. I've got the timer set for 20 minutes. The bottom tray is cooked in a little bit longer because it took me a few minutes to get the top tray done, but that's all right. A few minutes over, 20 minutes, a little over is just fine. There's a lot of steam coming off of this, so I had my tea kettle sitting on this back burner, and it's just full of condensation, and this burner is just, there's water pooled all down below. So I try and leave this vent open usually so that it can steam off, and a lot of times I turn a vent fan on as well. Alrighty, the trays are all out. They're all cooled off and nice and ready to go into a bag or bucket to be used. As you can see here, some of the moisture doesn't evaporate off depending on how much you're doing at a time, and that's totally fine. All of the moisture doesn't have to be out for it to be sterilized. It just has to reach temperature and maintain that temperature for a while, and so it has done that, so we're all good to go. As far as why you would want to do this, I really didn't talk a ton about that yet. And, pumice, anything that's really porous, anything that you're planting your plants in can retain, fungus, bacteria, various spores and different things. And if your plants are sensitive, if they're struggling, or even if they're not, some varieties are just a lot more susceptible to different bacteria and stuff. Pumice tends to be one of the ones that retains some of the least amount of bacteria. And so a lot of times it has a fairly low need for sterilization. But depending on how it's stored, where it's stored, how much humidity, how much, you know, other, a lot of times they're not completely pure pumice. There's some other, you know, bark and just different things kind of in, not in real big quantities, but in enough to possibly introduce some bacteria. And so just to avoid those things, that's why we sterilize it sometimes. That's why people sterilize other potting mediums. It's more, typically it is more common to sterilize more potting soil that has a lot more organic material in it, because those type of potting mediums are the ones that harbor the bacteria and the fungus, etc., a lot easier than something like this. This, you know, dry pumice just isn't super friendly for bacteria. It doesn't have a lot of the stuff they want to eat, etc., etc. So it tends not to be their favorite breeding ground. But sometimes these even looser mixes can definitely get some spores and various bacteria in them. So this is just a way to prevent that. And I will do another video on super soaking, like I said, which is just charging your pumice up and using, taking advantage basically of the time release features that it has, so to speak. It feels funny saying features on something like a rock, but, or I guess a volcanic glass to be more accurate, but still. But it definitely has some great time releasing properties that allows your plants to slowly absorb some nutrients instead of just having a big deluge of them. And there's a various ways to do it, and various things that you can soak it with, all kinds of things that you can soak it with. There's also various drawbacks that can potentially happen for your root systems that I want to talk about as well. But super soaking your pumice, if I cannot stumble over my words here, can be really helpful, especially if some of your plants are struggling. I think that's it for today. I will talk to you guys soon. If you'd like to join the Facebook group, there will be a link in the description box below. It's called I Dream of Succulents, and we may change the name eventually because it appears that there's another group with that name, and I just kind of threw that name up because I didn't have time to really ponder a name and was just like, I don't know, I'll call it I Dream of Succulents. Maybe I should do like a contest or something and have a renaming of the group and do some kind of a giveaway or something. That would be a lot of fun. So I might do that. But anyways, for now it's called I Dream of Succulents, and it's the smaller one of the two, I believe, from what I've been told. I haven't actually hunted the other group down, but I believe it's the smaller one for now anyways. I have a kitty trying to help me here. And say hi. Say hi, Polly. This is Polly. No. We're not going to jump in here. Anyways, I will let you guys go. I will talk to you soon, and happy growing.